Good evening, everyone. We sit here on the 30th of January
98
in the city of Boston. Seated to my right is Mr. Nick Dussault. He is, I must say, a highly irreverent comic, but this evening he's donning his left brain logical intellectual part of his capacity to talk with me tonight. How are you, Nick?
I'm well, Doctor. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It's nice to have you. And Nick's going to be goading me, and I want to reiterate to you at this moment that we are here approximately 10 days post the events that have taken place surrounding our presidency. If not our dear president, at least our dear presidency. If not our dear presidency, at least our dear country. If not our dear country, at least what could be a dear country. And I will start by saying that it's almost a nightmare of 1984, which we are well beyond 1984 kind of proportions, where without due process, people can suddenly try to tip another person's chair and literally eject and evict that person and or family and contingents out of the White House. What do you say to that, Nick?
That was nicely put. Last time we met, we talked about crazy, and you defined crazy, and I sort of think the entire country has gone crazy. We've got a president who's allegedly having sex with a 21-year-old girl. We've got his wife who's certainly a little, I don't know if you caught her on the Today Show. And
I did a couple of times, yes. I make it my business to check out.
I think she's a little delusional.
Why do you think she's delusional?
The scheme that she thinks that they've cooked up.
That it's a right-wing conspiracy,
so to speak? The right-wing conspiracy thing. Don't you think that's a little, I mean, you're the trained professional here, but don't you think that's a little bit paranoia at work?
All right. Well, I do tune in to a lot of events that are surrounding this and other major issues such as that. I watch a lot of cable television, C-SPAN, major networks. I'm constantly trying to find what I can. And I think, I can't speak for Hillary Clinton, but I do believe that when she says conspiracy, I'm not sure that she means that people literally are sitting down in a convention-style manner plotting their steps of how to overthrow the presidency per se in a plan that might be mapped out and engineered specifically to that end with precise details and steps. However, it is true that many groups of what might be called the right wing, so to speak, have extraordinarily dislikeful and disrespectful and maligning kinds of opinions and positions on the Clintons and their entourage. Many of the right-wing publications have consistently spent a lot of effort both researching and portraying as negative an image as they possibly could. It's the kind of thing where, depending on who you're talking to and the track record of the person, you can almost predict on both sides which way they are going to tell the story and in which light they're going to see it.
But don't you think if Bob Dole had been having sex with a 21-year-old, although I don't know if physically that's possible, but don't you think that the Democrats would have jumped all over that and had a similar sort of bandwagon? I think it's not really partisan. I think the whole system has just gone crazy.
Well, first of all, I have to say that we do not know if he had sex with the girl, and I don't want to get into that whole, here we go. Is he perhaps a red-blooded male who does go around with females? Quite possibly so. Has he specifically done what he is so-called alleged to have done in this case? Regardless of whether he is one of these very common kinds of male personalities that we have in this culture, very, very common, we do not know specifically what, if any, how the circumstances fall out in this particular case.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily his actions that are flipping everybody out. I mean, we've known for 6 years the man has a problem keeping his libido intact, but I do think his judgment is being questioned.
Right. But again, we do not know the circumstances of this particular event. And as his wife has said, and some people may be poo-pooing this, but we also have to look at the other side, that someone who does go to the White House and is perhaps, we don't know either, we don't know the other side, but hypothetically, could someone go to the White House and be very driven, and also be very driven to be near, whether it be Bill Clinton or a Bob Dole or a female who might have a position of such authority, and try to be in their good graces, try to ingratiate themselves to them, put little notices, you know, make themselves present, give presents,
well,
take presents.
The boyfriend of the girl said she was going in search of her presidential knee pads. I mean,
no, we don't know if she said that either.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
So what do you think is going on? I mean, everything is he said, she said, and it's like that about so much now. Everything's, why are people such voyeurs?
Okay. Well, and you also asked, is the country crazy? On what basis? You said it's like we've gone crazy. Could you repeat what you were meaning by that?
Well, I think everybody's so voyeur. I mean, there's a reason the National Enquirer is one of the top-selling publications in the country. And people say it's not true, this isn't true, that's not true, don't read it, whatever. But oftentimes what you read in there does happen to come true to some degree. So, you know, do people live vicariously? Do we like to make and break celebrities? Or?
Well, the major networks on occasion now have actually gotten their so-called facts from tabloids such as the Enquirer, and the line between what is mainstream so-called respectable press and tabloid is decidedly merged. And does the media, first of all, the media is a third estate. It is an entity unto itself. And one thing that must always be kept in mind, which is so easy to forget, is the media needs news, and it's needed news for as long as it has ever existed. Some of us might recall in the past old movies where people would be newspaper men or women, and the movie would be about getting that story, going to the utter heights to get that story and to be first about the story. So they were always, the media always needs that, and there are so many hours to fill. Imagine what a blessing it is to have something, and in order to fill them, and it's money, it's the advertisers that will pay for that time to be on the air with what the media is selling. And so when they get something, imagine how they might feel so gleeful and happy, perhaps, when you know, sort of humdrum everyday kinds of stories like murders, okay, humdrum everyday stories that are treated like that, which are murders and horrible, can get to be pushed aside, and they have something they don't have to worry about now. They can fill it, and not only that, they'll have more viewers than they've ever had before. Okay, we have one question coming in, and this is from a person, Miss Kitty, who appears on Nick's Live and Uncensored show, and she is asking, what's wrong with a romp in the hay? And she's asking that to Nick.
Well, Miss Kitty, you can romp all you want, but it don't mean a thing till you get that ring. Shoo-bop, shoo-bop. Thanks for calling, babe. And
I think, you know, you bring out a good point, because let's face it, too, about when we're talking the attractions and repulsions and the dance that goes around between males, females, or people of any gender in their different pursuits of each other for whatever reason. Is it not true, let's take, for example, that so much is geared towards getting a ring in a female-male relationship? That continues to be true. Or in any gender-to-gender relationship, it continues to be true that people want to be affiliated, even if not sexually, with who's got the most to offer, who's in the most advantageous position. We as a culture go around ignoring, walking over people that we think don't mean anything to us, and trying to get towards people that we think can do something for us or have status or prestige as this defined by the media. But back to the media. The media is selling, and their ratings have gone up. So we have to, we fail to, they are selling us something. They are selling us something. And you asked about celebrity. They do have to make, the way they do it, they cannot put a building or a freight train or a road or a tree an inanimate object or a mouse, maybe a mouse, I don't know, they can't put something inanimate on day after day, hour after hour, and have people tune in madly.
But what's wrong with the people that they sit there and they watch this stuff? Oh, I mean,
okay.
How many times did they show Princess Di's funeral? And it was one of the most widely watched television events in history. And people taped it and repeated it. And,
exactly.
You know, why are people sitting home watching this stuff over and over? And
okay, let me get back to this idea of celebrity. Because they can't use an inanimate object on what they're about, is the media spending too much time? There are more important issues. Well, there will only be a few murders, many children who don't have parents, many children who are living in drug dens, seniors who are in nursing homes uncared for and dying. I mean, should we go on and on? That's all that's happening around us as we speak. People depressed, people despondent, that's all.
But don't you think people who are miserable in their lives, who go to work and come home and drink cheap beer and watch television and then get up the next day and do the same thing, don't you think that they get some pleasure out of building up a celebrity and then watching them fall, and building another one and watching him fall? And
okay, let's go back to this celebrity idea, back to the idea that the media needs something to capture your attention. So the way they commoditize what they've got to sell, which is themselves, and the advertising behind it, is they need celebrity. And Clinton, whether you like him or dislike him, the way he makes people love, the way he has a charge defect, and Hillary, I mean, she may have been killed if there were a way to do it up till now. There were periods, if you recall, I mean, there was, you know, she couldn't leave her residence practically.
So you have to admit, the Clintons haven't done a bang-up job of putting people in positions of power that aren't. Well, let me rephrase this. How many people have been indicted in the Clinton administration?
Hold on, though. Let's hold that aside for a moment. Has the media, here comes another question, has the media gone overboard on this topic?
Well, it depends.
It's a travesty. It's beyond, it's not only overboard, it's entirely improper. But back to this idea of celebrity. Thank you for that question. Thank you. Back to this idea of celebrity. You need to commoditize what you've got to sell. You've got to have a celebrity. And he and she, but two of the most glamorous celebrities, whether you like them or hate them. Okay, they get a response from people. People love to hate them, they hate to love them, they love to love them, and so on. So he has more pull, more attraction and repulsion than perhaps some of our biggest Hollywood stars, okay? And one thing people don't like about him is that some Hollywood stars like him, okay? So it's true. And so they celebritize. That's a way to commoditize and have the media, that's the way they can gel together what they need to deliver, is through celebrity. The media makes and breaks celebrities as a commoditizing of how they have to do their work to get their dollars, to get their ratings, and to keep the money machine going. That's how that works. And we do love to build people up and tear them down. That's a whole other psychology. As much as we may love people and adore them, take the Michael Jackson case, we equally revel in tearing them down. We equally revel. We love to do both things. Yes, Prince has known this. You know, we can point to a lot of people who have known both sides of that coin. Yes.
Interesting. Let's talk a little more about Hillary and the whole Now. The Now organization has been incredibly quiet throughout all of this. Do you think there's possibly a little double standard
here? Oh boy,
here?
that is a good point. That is a good point. There's triple and quadruple standards here, okay? First of all, we don't know what President Clinton did. We don't know. I mean, he may very well be with women all the time. And as many people say, if he is, so be it. And on the issue of marriage and the idea that Hillary would stand by her man, so to speak, or pathologizing him as a sex addict, Hillary as a codependent, pathologizing the culture. This is so unfair. so many men, and I've had a lot of experience
with men?
As a female, okay?
Oh, okay.
Living in this culture. I have had a lot of experience. And I have a show, too, that I did,
Let's tell some stories.
did some time ago called Teen Love and Beyond, in which I explain to people, to girls mostly, what a minefield it is out there for a female to be trying to, you know, just negotiate her way through and whatever. And many females who do negotiate their ways through negotiate on the basis of being female. Okay. We'll get right back to this male-female relationship, but we have another question asking, what effect will this have on the children who are seeing this happen on TV? Okay. I think much has been said by people of the opposite side. Oh, yes, it's from Tom. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. I think so much has been said by those people who would oppose the president and the administration. Oh, what's Chelsea thinking? Poor Chelsea, to see this happen. What are the children thinking when they hear about oral sex and all this? The main thing, truly, there are levels at which we hear things and meanings at which the most meaning is really underlying the meanings of meanings. And the biggest thing that kids and anybody taking away from this is going to believe growing up is, look at how adults can behave. Not Hillary and Bill Clinton. Look at how adults can behave at each other. Look at how
they lie.
Anything can be told against you and how you can be torn apart.
Don't trust anybody.
Don't trust anybody. This is going to be a very big message that you can.
But don't you think Hillary's also sending a sort of what's the message here? She's it's okay. She's sort of like she's behaving like a Kennedy woman did in the previous generation. I mean, we've got Jennifer Flowers. He has now said 5 years after he lied to everybody.
I really don't think he lied.
He did. He said, I never had an affair, and he just
I don't
confessed.
recall that exact interview, but I do know that he said they've had problems in the marriage, and that's just another way of saying there's been infidelity, okay? And I think there's never been anybody saying people should. Oh my goodness, somebody's asking a question about sex now. Was this, we won't answer that question. Thank you. Thank you. That would have us digress too much. And we must stay in keeping with this repressed society.
Have you?
We must stay in keeping with this repressed society. But I suppose it will foster an agenda on sexual practices as well. And I think it will also probably bring out into the open less inhibition, I think, of you know, snickering and having like sort of a closet mentality, if you will.
Yeah, but don't you think it's a little sad that kids, you know, 7-year-old kids are now going to...
If they are going to hear about oral sex and ask what that is, or any sex, they are going to hear about it because a media has insisted to put it down.
Right, but don't you think
without due process, without knowing specifically if that particular event ever happened, and that media would not relent. It would.
Yeah, traditionally, the media favors the Clinton administration.
I doubt it.
Oh, no.
Oh, I doubt that.
Yeah.
I doubt that. How do you see
Eleanor
that?
Rodham Clift.
Eleanor Clift.
Eleanor Clift.
She is a supporter, but how many are not supporters?
A supporter.
But how many are not? George Will, William Safire, Bennett, Bill Bennett. The names go on and on. The lists are huge. Buchanan, Buchanan's sister.
Well,
I mean,
just
there's
the
very,
credible
very
journalists
many.
from the way I look
John
at it.
Sununu. William Safire has an awful lot of standing, as does George Will. Is idolized. He's thought of as a, you know, a be-all and end-all in the media. And I happened to see some behind-the-scenes sort of segments of that first Mike McCurry briefing at 1 p.m. that goes on daily at the White House when this story so-called broke. And one of the most aggressive, unyielding and not particularly nice people, believe it or not, anti-Clinton at that briefing was Sam Donaldson. Yeah.
Really?
Britt Hume is very contrary to Clinton. Britt Hume.
Cokie Roberts.
She was very mean. She usually is
Really?
quite supportive.
She's usually
And she was kind of negative in the breaking hours of
Really?
this, I recall. Yes. She's
Wow.
usually
Well, that's
quite
because they're all eating their words.
usually quite supportive. Not really, not really. You know, you don't know in this particular case. Like I said, you
Yeah,
don't
that's
know
true.
if somebody can come to Washington and be enamored and want to be affiliated and associated and connected to, we have, let's see, if all of this is true, what should happen to Mr. Clinton is another question that we have. Well, I know that if I say this, it will be too simplistically said, you know, to make an understanding of why it's said. But like I say, I wouldn't be shocked or surprised to imagine that the president and other presidents and many, many, many males, not to excuse it, have sex with females, whether it happened in this particular instance. And I also know that the city of Washington is a city where this kind of behavior is rampant.
Oh, Ted Kennedy.
No.
Classic example.
Ted, but also, yes, right.
I
Not
mean,
only the famous cases. This is a very high call-girl ratio in that city. This is a city...
I mean, these are power people. These people are...
And you know,
Congress is a millionaire boys club kind of thing. I mean, you can't be in the Senate especially if you don't have a lot of money. So they're not doing it for the money, they're doing it for the power. And part of the power is the sexual conquests, the parties, the ability to do and say and have and be. That's what these people are in it for. You don't think John Forbes' $800 million Heinz Kerry is doing it for the money or the good of the people. I'm sorry, he's doing it for the power.
and when women gravitate to these circumstances and try to be with men and try to be with men whether they're married or not, there's a responsibility from that angle as well. So, but you know, it just reminds me now too, when we talk about this, when someone asks what should happen to Mr. Clinton if this is true, and that's a very wrong thing, I think, to say, even if this is true. We need due process. If we want to talk about whether the president is someone who is with females in the past, now, in the future, in general, and is this okay or not okay, and if it isn't okay, should we make a constitutional law that when someone is sworn in president, he has to talk about what his sex patterns will be, or that if he's married, he will not have sex outside the marriage. If we, we could have talks about should this be in constitutional law. But what I want to talk about, which it reminds me, is this concept of morality and this concept of what are truly the deeply moral questions, you know, that we face as human beings. Are they, and back to this issue of marriage too, before I say this. Now, something like this has happened to me in my life, where I can be very, very close with a male, 100% friends, forever, and yet be in a situation where there's not a sexual relationship, and yet have a deep commitment, essentially be married, though I've never been married. And I can imagine that. And I can imagine that as something parties are comfortable with, that people could even almost be closer in spite of not having a sexual liaison. I know to some people that may not make sense, but I'm sure there are couples in this world that reach that, you know, that grow into that kind of relationship. And as many people have said, that's often between them, and in no way speaks of any codependency. If there's any dependency, perhaps Bill Clinton is dependent on Hillary. You know, one never knows. Or just two people that are very fine with each other. And unfortunately...
Can I interject a little point here? You keep referring to codependency, but so many codependents don't see that they're codependent. They don't understand it. They don't...
Right. And I just think it's very presumptuous and arrogant on the part of people, especially those in the field that deal with that, to pathologize what is there's too much pathologizing and victimology going around, too much blame, too much finger pointing, too much my ills are all something that can be blamed on this circumstance.
Well, everybody's a victim now. Everybody's got their own, I mean, you know, you're a horny, philandering 60-year-old man and you're a sex addict. You're not just a horny, philandering man, you're a sex addict.
Exactly. And that means that so many men in the United States are sex addicts, okay? I mean, should we just pathologize them? I mean, aren't we all just humans?
Because, you know, you keep saying men, 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 but they're doing it with women, so it's got to be an equal balance
exactly.
here.
It takes two to tango. What are the women doing out, oftentimes knowingly? And I don't want to go too heavily on either side, because each side will get angry about, you know, the side that's being exposed. But what about women who know that a father has 3 children at home and they're escapading at night? And sometimes you hear women who even go after the person who's married.
Sure.
What is that all about, you know? In this culture, without being addicts, and in any culture, males, as we said in Teen Love Beyond, generally, though not always, especially in relation to females, tend to be biologically more driven to the point-blank sexual aspect of things, whereas females tend to be more driven to the relational, attention, focus kind of companionship, you know, feeling attached and protected. And what the females find out so often is, no, they're not really attached except for the moment of sex. And they're in the receiving mode, not the aggressive giving mode, okay? They're not really attached, and they're not really protected. Not only are they not protected, they may be, you know, smashed to the ground by the same person with whom they have this liaison, and then later come forward and with sour grapes almost. I mean, what about people who go through this and learn the hard lesson?
Well, let's talk about the sour grapes thing for a minute.
Sure.
Let's talk about Anita Hill. I mean, if somebody said something that were that horribly offensive, would you wait 7 years? Oh God, every feminist now wacko in the world's going to start calling me. But
I feel, you know, I try to be a responsible, independent person, a person even beyond the female. But you know, and I've been in many circumstances. I've lived quite a number of years already, quite a number of decades, and constantly I've been blocked. You know, I don't look at it that way. Sit on my lap, give me a kiss, put their arms around you. This is a constant. This is a given. You know, in the years that I was coming up, constantly. So you're always going sideways. If you want to go ahead, especially in some of the industries that I've been involved in, you basically do it through, you know, some sort of sexual, you know, not maybe not necessarily, even in psychology, in hospitals, this is going on. This is certainly going on in the music industry, big time. It's going on in modeling. In modeling, it's just, you know, in Hollywood. So what do? What does a female do? Does a female go run and report and take someone, challenge someone, or cry about it? Or does a female, if blocked here, try to find another way around it? At which point do we as females and as human beings stand up and take responsibility and decide not to play the game, or better yet, decide not and not to cut off the genitals of the male, so to speak. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? That's not how we're going to bring about change, to castigate the males and to put them in a jail cell. You won't get the change that way. The only way we're going to get change is by constantly evolving and talking to each other. And to a degree, we like virile males. We don't want males who can't move in any direction. But on the other hand, how do you get that fine balance of a male that will both respect a female and just ever delicately, respectfully approach?
But we've come so far in the other direction. Harmless flirting, a slightly off-color joke. These are all, I mean, these aren't horrible behaviors, but
sometimes we're too confining and without real change, and the behavior is just going to come out some other sort of way, and it just makes for a lot of like false kinds of uptight, you know, restrictions and complexes and fears that people have to live with. It adds stress to a situation rather than relieving stress, you know, because there's sort of like a vindictiveness or a revenge about it. And I think it's up to females, we as females, again, this is explained in Teen Love and Beyond, which I'll show it sometime in the near future probably, but we as females, we're constantly confronted. This is where we find ourselves. As different people in different so-called categories of existence, you're finding yourself in certain kind of genders and skin colors and religions and age groups and you name it. Okay, that's where you find yourself. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to attack the so-called offender for verbal behavior, or, you know, I guess there are some kinds of verbal behavior that do cross the line. Are you going to play ball and then spill all? Are you going to date a married man and then tell all the lurid details because he wouldn't stay with you? You know, are you going to accuse because it doesn't work out? Are you going to accuse because you find out that most sex that females let themselves get into, or a great majority of it, turns out to be not at all what they hoped it would, you know, that the Prince Charming fantasy, you know, or wish, I should say, which we do have as females, just goes right down the tube? What are you going to do about it? You know, are you going to castigate males? And males are out there behaving in ways that, I mean, males, they lean over you. You go to a bar, you might want to meet somebody. They're breathing down your neck. You can feel what the questions are about. The females don't want that, but they want the male.
Then don't go to the bar.
But they want the male. You see, that's the dilemma.
You know,
you want the male, but you don't want the one-night stand. Now, some females may say, I love sex. I want 10-night stands, okay? But generally speaking, some of this behavior comes around after a lot of disappointment, and, you know, a lot of water goes under the bridge, and then, you know, there's a repetition maybe of sleeping around and everything. But I think at the heart of femaleness, what females really want is some guy that would be halfway respectful and yet virile, not feel compromised by being halfway respectful and faithful and loyal, and not look at other women,
Sounds like a puppy.
Women don't want guys generally. I know some women will say, well, that's okay. You know, some don't mind if their husbands read pornography, which some do, and love, you know, to look at other women's. But generally, you know, women would like to be loved and adored for who they are and revered, you know, within a monogamous relationship.
Like the Clintons. Sorry, I couldn't help it.
Yeah. So back to this morality.
We never did answer the question of what do you think should happen to Bill if all of this is in fact true?
Okay. What I was going to say is levels of morality, because I want to talk about what really counts, in my opinion. You know, what really counts. We've got to look at who's being more moral, more criminal, more immoral. Is it moral to leak every rumor, some of which have had to be taken back because they could have been sued for, like the Secret Service man who was going to be a witness and they had to pull that, and another one that Clinton was going to resign like the second day, I can't remember, from CNN, they had to pull that. Is that more moral, less moral, immoral than the supposed alleged facts, which again we don't know in this specific detail? What is more moral? And exposing the children over and over again to oral sex and sexual practices, and the fact that you can be torn apart, and that, oh my goodness, it's a very unsafe world out there, you know, that people don't respect your privacy, there's no place that you can run or hide, that everything is up for grabs. And also, what are the real moralities that we're trying to get at here? Are we trying to talk about compassion? Are we people who hate? You know, I'm not saying it's moral or immoral to hate, but is it okay to have a mob mentality, a lynch mentality, and to just be hateful and not examine it, not be disciplined of what does cross your lips and what you do print and what you do say? Should we have some place for compassion if we're evolving to be moral human beings? What about that? Should we just be trying to fell people, make them fall down? Should we have conflict of interest in being aligned with major corporate interests that are being cost multi-billions of dollars by practices of the person who is being felled? You know, is that a moral dilemma? Should we ignore suffering? Should we, a day or two ago, a Russian nuclear submarine had an explosion near Norway in the underwater. Is that a moral dilemma? Okay, and it was denied that there's any radiation. How absurd that there's no radiation. You know, the dolphins have washed ashore here. Is that a moral dilemma? Can we just feel any way we want, any old way? Is that okay? And say whatever we want. Can we be mean? How about if we're mean? Is that a moral dilemma, being mean? We may not even know it. How about a culture that throws the elderly out? Have you been to a nursing home lately? Is that a moral dilemma? How about if you care only for money? That's all, at all costs, no matter what it costs to you know, people's lives. And what about if you have a country where you say, every man for him or herself, you know, you're on your own, no policies for people, no cooperative efforts of regulation, you're on your own, but in the meantime, laws continue to pass that give tax breaks to corporations, and they do. They continue to pass, okay? And how about the morality of a school system that in which some children can take an automatic weapon or some weapon and mow down their peers and cause generational suffering to whole areas? Is that a moral problem that our children are dropping from suicide or possibly being hurt in school or killed or living with the legacy of that, and yet the news just takes it and basically nothing's being done about it, and the kids are feeling deep pain, and the kids are going off the deep end for some reason, and we're not paying attention to it? Or how about the money that's been spent on this prosecution? At least 40 million, they say. Could that money have been put to better use so far, or is it necessary to find out about oral sex and decide about what's the marriage between Bill and Hillary Clinton? And what about the war?
Quite a mouthful.
What about the war on drugs? All the billions that have been spent for all the years, multi-billions, and would that money be better spent as a nest egg in the bank for people saying, you can have this money to go to college? It's waiting for you if you get certain grades. Would that help the drug problem? Multi-billions spent on drugs? And what about what it's doing to Chelsea to see her parents ripped apart like this, that she's got to love dearly, that she's got to love dearly? And is it immoral to be sure? To be sure you're right, and to know what's right for everybody else. This is what I like about this. For the people who live in this country, there are a couple of camps, more or less. There are people who feel live and let live, kind of, you know, yawn, tell me something I really want to hear. And by the way, we watch this not so much because it's so lurid, that's one part of it, but we watch it because you have to watch it. If you don't watch this, you're going to miss something that's very important and earth-shattering that is happening to this country as we speak. All of a sudden, the tables have turned, and it's practically like they're trying to just dump what's in the White House right out into the alley. We are in the midst of that kind of crisis. And if you don't watch it, not that you take pleasure in the lurid details, you are going to miss something that we are going through together as a people, whether you think it's rotten or whether you think it's good. And the people that, the silent majority, most of whom didn't even come out to vote, the people with the most vociferous opinions and who appear on TV to keep this going have to be on the opposite side, because the others who don't care about it or aren't that crazy to keep it going, they won't be on television doing it. It's just not something they're into. And I believe they probably are the silent majority, okay? And those people, I say, live and let live, and they say, of different religions and whatever practices of people, they say, that's their trip, this is mine. You know, they don't even think about it. It's like, whatever, or, you know, or that's interesting, or let me learn about it. Many variations in the shades of gray that we all are, okay? Wouldn't dare to presume to judge. Wouldn't dare to play God on somebody else's life, okay? Mm-hmm. But the another side that wants to promote this and assure this, knows what people need and want to impose it. That's the difference. Say, no, they don't like all those people who hold those kind of valueless, they think that's a valueless position. that you've got to think a certain sort of way, that it goes with, I've heard recently with the Judeo-Christian ethic, that it has this thing so-called family values. And for how many centuries and how many great literature and how many experiences around the world have we found out that behind the white gloves and the nice suit and the sermonizing lies another reality? How often has that truth been painted for us time and time and time again?
Absolutely, but I think with the Clinton issue, the real leaders in the witch hunt, I guess is what you'd want to call it, aren't so much going after him for the sex as for the lying and the bad judgment and the misrepresentations. And I think they're challenging, you know, him on an ethical level. They're not judging the act so much as, I mean...
Well, the way I heard it...
Richard Nixon lied.
Well, the way I heard it, first of all, we don't know if he lied, and they're going after him. Okay, we don't know that. Let's...
Who, Richard Nixon?
No. This case,
oh.
Put up or shut up is, you know, first of all, you know, as far as allegations go.
Oh, okay.
Put them out literally or leave them alone. Say them once maybe and let it be, okay, until you've got something you can really bring forward. And number two, this jurisdiction, this taping, Linda Tripp made $88,000 in her job. Monica made $32,700 something in the job, okay? Usually, people that are paid at the 2/3 higher level are not close friends with the ones that are paid. Could be, just like it could be anything here that we don't know about. They're commingling, okay? Linda Tripp does show up at all these other things that are anti-Clinton, you know, many of the different situations that have emerged. She's been part of them. And she's taping. And if you look at what little we have been seen of the tape, you see the psychology is very much prepping that the answer come out this way. Now, what if you put that together?
But you could take the other side of the coin, and it's all again in how you're presenting it.
Yeah.
A 21-year-old woman goes to Washington, performs fellatio on the president.
Yes, she did.
Okay, but a lot of what you're saying is speculative too, and it's all in how you're presenting it. Everybody has their slant.
That's right. So since we're in the speculative mode...
Let's speculate for...
No, I'm saying I have to present the counter-speculation. You see, since we're in the pie in the sky, if you were presenting facts to me, I wouldn't be giving you these hypotheses. You see, someone has to come to the defense of, wait a minute, don't tell me you've got the truth when what you really have is just speculation and allegation. Don't tell me that, you know? And if you did have the truth, let's look at this in a bigger context.
But we don't have the truth, so none of us should really be... I mean, I personally have no problem with what he did because that's between he and Hillary. I do, however, have a problem with lying and deception and character. You know, I'm not a big fan of Clinton anyway. There's a shock,
you know, they were asking... It was asked, I heard, of high school students, what do you think of you know, the situation, and would you have denied it if it came to pass and so forth? And many of them, from some teachers I heard on TV, were saying that of course you would deny something like that. Would you just go and tell somebody something like that? You know.
Well,
so I'm not saying that you should, but think of what kind of, would you, you know, in this world, one thing we know from today and these last 10 days and in general from O.J. Simpson and from all the other things that go down in the country and the world is anything you say can be held against you. And people are very careful in what they say now. You've really got to be careful of the most innocent things of what you say, when you say it, who you say it to. And they say a simple statement could be made of denial. Well, it doesn't work that way. You make a simple statement of denial, that leads to another question, it leads to an interpretation of the clause and the phrasing of the thing. It just doesn't stop because it's hot. It's hot, it's something that you can get a lot of mileage off of, it's something that increases ratings. It's that simple.
Well, to go one step further with this, everybody's manipulating the press and everybody's manipulating the ratings. Why is it you read things about Bill Clinton and you don't about Michael Dukakis when he was a governor? Why is it you read about Madonna but you don't about Jodie Foster? I mean, you know what I'm saying? So these people, Princess Diana, I mean, it's a horrible tragedy, but it was a cat and mouse game. She used the media, they manipulated it, and it just went awry, and she died. But to say it's the media is, at fault for all of this, it's a two-way street here. There are people who have done, who have succeeded, who do very well, whose sex lives remain where they should be, in private, behind their, their four walls.
Yes, yes. Well, I still say that this is the realm of allegation, and as such, no one has a right to be doing that and carrying 24-hour coverage on that. This is not a matter of fact. That's what I say. It's not about whether somebody had sex or not. It's whether the speculation, the allegations, and then the whole issue of how tapes were made, who befriended whom, on what basis, who's connected to whom in the investigation. I just want to broaden the picture. Why should we narrow in microscopically, tunnel vision, just on this? And then we have the whole issue of that it's sex. And sex is a great, and it's not constitutional law, and it's not policy making, and it's not about pollution, and it's not about tobacco, and it's not about education, and it's not about giving the Indians, as was done by executive order, the right to be treated as a sovereign nation recently, an executive. It's not about any of that stuff now, is it? So that's a whole other...
But none of that stuff would sell the National Enquirer.
Yeah,
I mean, this
and
is,
telling about sex is humiliating. Telling, you can humiliate people with sex. And it also gives us a state of where we are in the level of repression. And the fact that to us, sex is a snickering affair, sex is a dirty affair, sex is a shameful affair, and we're talking about a lot of pots calling the kettle black. We're talking about holier than thou from a nation that is utterly divorced, utterly philandering, and utterly full of infidelity. I mean, we're saying, what, does this person think he's better than us? By the same token, we're saying, so we have to bring him down, and by the same token, we're accusing him of what we're guilty of. So there are many shades of gray. I wish it were so simple that people were so bad, and we don't know. We don't know. I have to still go back to that. Yes, and it very well may be that President Clinton, as President Johnson...
But you know what? You still never answered that one question. What should happen to Clinton if this is all true?
Okay, so
I want your opinion.
Back to the larger context of all this morality I was talking about. What is true morality? And what is it in the relative age that we live in the evolving world of technology and the fast speed of life where families are torn asunder and what are our values? Are we really valueless? And are our values in a flux of change? And is the old shame system and humiliation system, I think it's a good time to investigate, and I would just hold at bay. I would not be in the persecutory mode myself. I would not be in the persecutory mode. I think that's too bad. Especially...
You're such a good liberal, Nancy. You still haven't answered the question.
That's the answer. That's the answer. I would not persecute. No, I would not over that. No, I would not. And I wish we could see things that
He'll slap on the wrist like Barney Frank got?
No. I don't think it's an issue of slapping on the wrist. I think we ought to have a new discussion of whether... okay, just 1 second. I think we ought to have a discussion of this, of whether when we elect someone a president, should it be written into law that the conditions of marriage, as we define them, are of necessity a part of his duties as President of the United States to uphold. That's what I think the debate should be about.
You can't really do that, though.
Why not? Of course.
I mean, that's ludicrous.
Right. So I'm just opening, I'm just trying to open the perspective on this. Now, we've got another question here. It says,
I like this question.
What will happen the Mr. and Mrs. Clinton relationship after this is all over, what will happen to them? What will happen to them? Well, we don't know if, I would think we can't tell if they really get along well together or they don't get along well together. Any two people that have had that much water under the bridge in all the years they've been together, certainly, you know, have some level. I've got, yes, thank you. Thanks very much. It's Mr. Dane Chenery. Thank you.
Boy, the phone's ringing off the hook,
yeah,
huh?
the phone's ringing. We don't know how, you know, much they are at fighting or living amicably. We don't know that question either. So I think that would depend. But I do believe there's one thing, too, about both of them. Give either of them, I saw Hillary Clinton on TV the other day, give either of them the pulpit, especially Hillary, and let them talk policy and the things they want to do. She was talking about preserving monuments and archaeological sites that we don't even know about in this country. It was the stuff that, the things that were coming out of her were incredible. These people have done their homework the way John Silver had done his homework, who many people despise. Oh. But if you asked him a question, did he know the ins and outs and the tedious details of what he would have been about as a governor? Yes, he did. That's a rare kind of, and both of them, give them an inch, and they will tell you so much. Why don't we allow opportunity for policy? Why don't we allow opportunity for ideology and discussion and debate of what we have to do in living together? Look, whether they straighten this thing out, whether it's a problem or a problem only to other people, we have to live together somehow as a country. That's the major issue at hand, and we are more and more fractionated than ever. And the quality of life is deteriorating. And there's some very, you know, it's not okay to just have increasing violence and to just have the news report it that now the reality is violence. Too bad, let's go on to a car advertisement. And then let's talk about the Clinton sex scandal. Let us get our thinking caps on. Let us get our framework radically rearranged to what are the real things that are going to make us feel better. That's what it's about. You know, of course, those of us who are out there joking about sex say, oh, we know what makes us feel better. You know, let's get under the covers and feel better. You know what I mean? Okay, you can hear it now. You can hear the lurid jokes. But that's what we've got to be talking about. What is going to make it easier to live, nicer to live, more optimistic to live? What else, we have another question, is going on in the world besides this issue? Just about everything. And those of you who are out there having a great life tonight, who are having every wish attended to, whose children are not exhausted from the daycare, whose workplace was friendly and the pace of it very moderate, whose bills are paid, whose dreams are all taken care of, whose love connections are fine, those of you who are in that state of nirvana and whose grandparents are sitting very privilegedly in love and in security along with their family that they made, those of you who sit in that circumstance and know God without the white gloves, deep in your soul from a lot of suffering, please call in and tell us, because then we won't have any other issues in this world. Then we know all is right with the world. I want to end this show. I will say good night to you. Thank you for watching. Please tune in again. And this is my parting thought to you. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is tramping round the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He's marching with truth and justice, with a mighty and swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Toward a Quality of Life. Please tune in again. Good night.